Meredith's many guests here today, parents Richard and Belinda Watson, platonic soulmate and dear sister, sophomore Abby Watson, two aunties joining virtually, Mary Burton and Sally Bramwell, and the other virtual guest, and according to Meredith, platonic soulmate number 2, Bertie Grudette. We're glad you are all here today. Meredith arrived at prep in the 7th grade. Currently, Meredith is active in the art club, the chorus, the Dungeons and Dragons club, and serves as the VP of the Student Diversity Club. They love participating in theater from time to time, and has also made a name for themselves as dad to at least 10 people. Meredith is very passionate about the arts, as many of you already know, performing and visual. If you know them, you know how incredibly talented this young person is, particularly with digital art, and I have had the privilege of teaching them for the past 4 years. On a regular basis, Meredith astounds me with their talent, and I am so excited about what the future holds for them in the world of art. Today, Meredith is going to share a tough topic with us, opening up the conversation of mental health awareness, and also telling us a personal story. Please give a warm welcome to Meredith.
What do you do when you find yourself in a particularly stressful or upsetting situation? Whatever your definition of said situation is, just try to think of your response. Say, for example, you're standing in front of a room filled with, 100 people, give or take, and you have to keep them entertained for the next 10 to 15 minutes. I personally kind of wish the floor would open up and swallow me whole. This is how it feels for me when I'm the center of attention, no matter the size of the audience. Public speaking is something that triggers my anxiety, one of my everyday mental challenges. Consider this for a moment. According to the World Health Organization, between 1 and 6 people out of the entire human population are likely to be aged between 10 and 19 years. I'm no math expert, but 1/6 of the current world population is about 1,316 people, give or take. With this knowledge, the World Health Organization goes on to say, quote, an estimated 10 to 20% of adolescents globally experience mental health conditions, yet these remain underdiagnosed and undertreated, unquote. From the crudely calculated number I got before, about 20% of that is just over 263 million people worldwide who are likely experiencing some form of mental health condition. Roughly half of those are around 14 years old when symptoms start to become diagnosable, and depression is globally one of the leaders in causing disability and illness among adolescents. Big numbers and data aside, that's a lot of young people living with some form of decreased mental health experience. Despite a greater push for equal medical treatment and recognition in the United States, dating back to as early as the 1840s, when activist Dorothy Dix began her quest to win the government's favor in stating better living and treatment conditions for the so-called mentally ill, a topic that still seems to be such a taboo in modern day society. That's not to say that it hasn't gotten better than it was over a century ago, but the conversation still seems to be one that many people struggle with. This can be even harder for certain people groups in our society, such as men, athletes, and the LGBTQ+ community, to name a few, but certainly not all. While mental health conditions are more common in women, societal pressure on men often causes them not to seek out professional help for their struggles. Men are less likely to seek medical attention and psychiatric help. Their suicide rate is much higher, and they are more apt to abuse drugs and alcohol following or coinciding with a mental health crisis. According to the Mental Health Foundation for the UK, about 3 times as many men commit suicide than women. Ed Sheeran is by far one of my favorite musical artists. Love him or hate him, his music has been incredibly relatable and therapeutic for me during some of my darker times. He's a male musical artist who has suffered heavily with mental health issues, including low self-esteem, depressive states that would lead him to overeat and sleep inconsistently, and abuse of drugs and alcohol. He reflects on these troubles in his music. For example, one of my favorite songs by him, Bloodstream, was written in reference to an experience in which he took an illicit drug during a wedding celebration. Ed commented via Spotify track-by-track that quote, "During it all, I felt a lot of things. I felt anxiety. I felt love. I felt warm. I felt a bit weird. And afterwards, you spent all day just thinking about what you've been through," unquote. Sheeran has come a long way in managing his mental health through the help of his wife, exercise, managing a healthier diet, and using his songs as an outlet. Athletes, especially those involved in professional or elite professions, often also go overlooked in mental health conversations. According to athletesforhope.org, quote, "Among professional athletes, data shows that up to 35% of elite athletes suffer from a mental health crisis, which may manifest as stress, eating disorders, burnout, or depression and anxiety," end quote. While exercise is a great way to tackle depressive fog, and putting your passion into an activity you love can also prove to be incredibly positive, the pressure of needing to perform well in the public eye can lead to an increase in stress for these athletes. Simone Biles is an absolutely incredible woman. Bringing home 4 gold medals in the women's gymnastics Olympic events, Biles is an inspiration to young girls across the world. She's been a strong advocate for female athletes and is an important role model for both female athletes and women of color. It's no surprise that her sudden withdrawal from this summer's Olympics was everywhere in the media. The pressure of being the top female gymnast in the world weighed heavy on her, and so Simone made the difficult yet important decision to put her mental health first and step out, making a brave statement and showing that it was okay to be both a world-ranking athlete and also a vulnerable human being. As she said in Time magazine, quote, "It's okay sometimes to sit out the big competitions and focus on yourself, because it shows how strong of a competitor that you really are, rather than just battle through it," unquote. The discussion of LGBTQ plus topics is already socially uncomfortable for a lot of people, so imagine how those within this group feel after piling society's perceptions onto their mental struggles. LGBTQ plus individuals frequently grapple with mental health conditions due to social, political, and familial pressures and discrimination. For many LGBTQ plus people, even from a young age, dealing with negative interactions during these developmental years can quickly turn into a dangerous mental crisis. Discrimination can lead LGBTQ plus youth to feel ostracized and dehumanized, and oftentimes they are forced still to live with unaccepting families that have little freedom to express themselves without fear of being disowned or harmed. The same environment can carry over to school and social media environments as well. This is a large part of why the suicide rates in LGBTQ plus teens are devastatingly high. Sam Smith is another musical inspiration to me, and their album Love Goes has been a particularly influential part of my healing, since all of the songs tell an emotionally raw story of Smith's struggles with past relationships, depression, and anxiety. Sam Smith is also non-binary, like myself, identifying with they/them pronouns. Smith is also exclusively attracted to men. They have faced a lot of ridicule since coming out as non-binary in September of 2019, with much of your typical internet bullying and discrimination. Despite this, Smith speaks out positively about how coming out as non-binary allowed them to feel more comfortable and genuine in their own skin. In an interview with CBS News co-host Anthony Mason, they say, quote, "It's going better now, so much better. After being able to talk about my gender expression, I feel such a weight has been lifted," unquote. My speech topic is very personal to me, since I've been living with both anxiety and depression since middle school. I wanted to try and share some things that I've learned and found helpful over my years of emotional messiness. 2021 has been, without a doubt in my mind, the single most rigorous and challenging time of my life, and yet also the most fruitful. Stepping back to January of this year, where my life consisted mostly of being a junior and trying my best not to fall asleep in the back of Mr. White's classroom. No disrespect to him, I just couldn't focus. I was exhausted, sleeping at all the wrong times of the day, and couldn't keep focused for more than a few seconds at a time. I'd never felt more empty and yet oversaturated at the same time. My grades began to waver, and with that came the fear of disappointing my teachers. I felt stressed, isolated, and invisible. I often fell into dark periods almost every day where I'd sit in rooms filled with people and still feel as though I were a mere inconvenience to them, even if they were my friends. I kept asking myself, am Am I wanted? Am I annoying? If I told them that I felt alone, would that make them feel upset? I felt trapped and didn't know where to go. Time seemed to pass slower and grayer with every day, until finally I broke. On February 9th, I met with my therapist and discussed with her how I've been feeling worse over the past month, and that I just wanted somebody to tell me what was wrong with me. This is the same appointment where I was formally assured that there was nothing wrong with me, but that I was struggling with clinical depression. There was a relief to this. It wasn't just something I was making up in my head. I had identified a problem which could now be relieved. I felt more positive, that is until Friday, February 12th. That day is very vivid in my mind. The whole weekend is very vivid in my mind. That Friday had been pretty good to start out with. I'd begun my morning, the upper school chorus, as we drove around town, serenading parents and school sponsors with songs for Valentine's. Later that morning, I gave a presentation with Ava and Brianna in Mrs. Miller's CP physics class. At the end of the day, the chorus performed again, singing serenades for the student body. I remember feeling lighthearted. After school, I spent the next few hours at work preparing for a long weekend of cutting pineapple slices into heart shapes. That evening, I was tired but happy. I sat at dinner and my father did a lot of chatting about how my day went. I hadn't keyed in on it at the time, but I remember that my mother was much less vocal than usual. After a while, my dad asked me to go get my sister, because my mom had something to tell us. When I returned from upstairs, I felt my heart flip when I saw tears in my mother's eyes. My first thought was, oh no, which pet has passed away? Where's Lola, our 15-year-old chihuahua? Instead, my grandfather's name was the next thing she spoke. Nothing could have prepared me for that. He had passed away in his sleep suddenly, thousands of miles away from us in New Zealand. I hadn't seen him in almost 3 years, and we had not traveled to see him this year due to COVID. I can't even describe the type of pain, distress, anger, emptiness. I just cried. There was nothing else I could do. The grief I experienced following his passing was unlike anything I'd ever felt before. The next day spent with my family was empty and gray. 2 days later, on February 14th, things didn't get better. I've been in a very committed relationship for 4 years, which was abruptly cut short in the pre-dawn hours. I still can't answer questions about why it happened, but all I know is that after already being overtaken with indescribable grief over my grandfather, I was in no position to face this other sort of loss. Dumped on Valentine's Day. How cliche. I had never felt more isolated and helpless than I had that weekend. I was dealt 2 losses within 48 hours, and the magnitude of this cannot be put into words. And this was after the depression diagnosis. This is where things get a little bit more sensitive, and so if at any point you feel uncomfortable or stressed, I give you permission to tune me out. The days that followed were the hardest in my life. I didn't want to get out of bed for anything. I didn't even want to wake up. I felt as though the world was trying to play some sick joke on me. The pain was overwhelming. I wanted to way out. My mental state was compromised beyond anything I'd ever felt before, and I couldn't decide whether I was more afraid of death or of being alive. I fear what I may have done if I hadn't expressed my feelings to my family. All of the beloved people in my life reminded me of their presence, and they're the reason I'm still able to stand here today. Being shown that I wasn't alone, I remember my own sister telling me that, even if everyone else left me, she would never leave my side. I'll remember that for the rest of my life. The months that followed were filled with continuous challenges. In my distress, I made bad decisions and let the wrong people use that to their advantage, use me to their advantage. Despite this, it's ironic to think that the worst year of my life is also the year I learned to love myself. I came out as non-binary in March, and this is one of the pivotal points in my life. I felt more like myself than I ever had. I didn't feel like I had to be what everyone expected me to be, and I found the hatred for my body that I'd harbored since the 4th grade begin to dissipate. On top of that, I've been taking a light antidepressant since February to complement my weekly therapy visits, allowing a clear head and more productive counseling sessions. I had loved ones reach out to me and talk to me every day to remind me that I wasn't alone. They helped me see my worth for who I was just as me, not what I had to be for anybody else. Finding a reason to live for myself was the most important part of my journey. It was also the hardest. I found personal peace through my artwork and listening to a lot of music to allow myself to feel. Recognizing and coexisting with my feelings while not letting them control me was my nirvana. I know I'm not the only one who struggles with purpose. Many people in this room, particularly my fellow seniors, likely feel at least the pressure of college and adulthood coming, and worrying about what their place in the world will be. The most valuable thing that I learned is that there doesn't need to be a set path for anything. The one thing you can control is yourself and your own actions and thoughts, though sometimes you have to fight yourself for that. But with the right tools, such as counseling, medication, and a strong support system, it can be overcome. Take it from me. I love you all. Thank you.
As I was getting ready this morning, I was considering what to wear for Meredith's speech. I wanted to look nice for this occasion, so typically I'd be a little more dressy than this. But this is a student who I've come to respect, admire, and love. So if you can't see it from where you are, I'm wearing a shirt with hearts all over it. And Meredith, we love having you in our world. Meredith, thank you so much for your speech today. Seniors, you're welcome to share in the celebration with Meredith. And everyone else, I hope you have a great afternoon on this beautiful day. Thank you.